The spotlight burned into my skin like a brand, and I could feel every eye in the room pinning me to the podium. "Dad," I said, my voice cracking the silence like a gunshot. "You called me broken when I was just a boy trying to whisper my truth." The words hung there, raw and unfiltered, and in that instant, I saw him, Lincoln Hargrove, the unbreakable titan of boardrooms, flinch in the front row, his face draining of color as if I just yanked the empire from under his feet. I was 10 years old the first time I died inside, right there in our sprawling Lakeshore Drive penthouse, with the Chicago skyline mocking me through floor-to-ceiling windows. It wasn't a car crash or a fall from the balcony. It was simpler, sharper. A confession that shattered everything. "Dad?" I'd stammered, my small hands twisting the hem of my school blazer. I think I like boys the way I'm supposed to like girls." The air had gone still, the kind of still that precedes a storm, and Lincoln, my father, the CEO of Hargrove Industries, a man who bent steel magnates to his will, had looked at me not with confusion, but with something colder, disgust. "You'll outgrow it," he'd snapped, his voice like gravel under tires, slamming his leather-bound ledger shut on the mahogany desk. But he didn't stop there. He shipped me off to a reform summer camp in the Wisconsin woods that very week, a place reeking of pine and pious lies, where counselors preached sermons on fixing what God hadn't broken. Mom tried to fight it. "God," she fought, her voice echoing through the marble halls like a plea to the saints. But Lincoln's word was law. "He's confused, Evelyn," he'd hiss at her, his broad shoulders blocking the door as he packed my suitcase himself. "And I'll be damned if my son turns into some freak." I remember the last thing he said before the driver hauled me away. "Don't embarrass me, Isaac, ever." Those words lodged in my chest like shrapnel, and for years, they dictated every breath. That camp was hell disguised as salvation. Mornings started with group prayers, afternoons with trust falls that felt more like traps, and nights. Nights were the worst, huddled in bunks with boys like me, all of us wide-eyed and whispering secrets under threadbare blankets. There was Tommy, a freckled kid from Milwaukee with a laugh like summer rain, who taught me how to sneak contraband candy from the kitchen. We'd lie there in the dark, our hands brushing accidentally on purpose, and for a fleeting moment, I'd forget the ache. But the counselors caught on quick. "Repent or burn." Brother Elias would thunder from the pulpit, his Bible thumping like a judge's gavel. They isolated us, made us write letters of apology to our sinful selves. I burned mine in the campfire one night, the flames licking the paper as tears blurred the edges. By summer's end, I'd learned to bury it deep, the wanting, the wondering, under layers of silence and straight-A report cards. Back in Chicago, things fractured further. Mom and Dad's marriage, already a tightrope over an abyss, snapped under the strain. She filed for divorce 6 months later, citing irreconcilable differences. But we both knew the truth. I was the difference, the crack in their porcelain facade. Custody went to her, thank God, and we fled to a modest brownstone in Wicker Park, far from the gold-plated cage of the Gold Coast. Lincoln sent checks, fat ones, the kind that bought silence but never visits. Holidays were radio static. Birthdays, a card with his scrawled signature and a generic "proud of you, son." Proud. The word tasted like ash. High school was a battlefield of my own making. At Lincoln Park High, I was the quiet kid with the vintage leather jacket and a sketchbook full of charcoal portraits. Mostly boys, their faces soft in the margins, dreams I dared not voice. I dated girls to blend in, tentative handholds at football games that left me hollow. But then came Alex, the transfer from Evanston with eyes like storm clouds and a skateboard perpetually under his arm. He crashed into my life during art class, literally. His board clipping my easel, sending charcoal dust flying like black snow. "Shit, sorry man," he'd grinned, all dimples and defiance, helping me salvage the canvas. We bonded over shared playlists, Nirvana bootlegs and early Strokes demos, and late-night study sessions that devolved into confessions over stolen beers from his dad's fridge. "I think I'm gay," he said one rainy afternoon in his garage, rain pattering on the tin roof like impatient fingers, my heart jackhammered. "Me too," I whispered, and just like that, the world tilted. Our first kiss was clumsy, all teeth and urgency, tasting of cherry chapstick and freedom. For 2 glorious years, we were each other's anchor. Stolen moments in Grant Park, fingers laced under cafeteria tables, dreams of escaping to New York where no one knew our names. Alex talked about Juilliard. I spun tales of illustrating graphic novels. But love at 17 is fragile as spun glass. And ours shattered the night Lincoln's private investigator showed up at Alex's door. Started with a phone call. "Isaac, we need to talk." Alex's voice trembled over the line, and I knew in my gut, that my father's shadow had fallen again. Turns out, Lincoln had caught wind of us through some society whisper. A nosy aunt at a gala who'd seen us too close at a concert. He didn't confront me. Oh no, that would require facing his own blood. Instead, he unleashed his machine. A dossier of photos, emails to Alex's parents painting me as a troubled influence, even a veiled threat to pull funding from his dad's struggling auto shop. Alex's folks, conservative Catholics from the suburbs, folded like cheap suits. "It's not you," Alex sobbed into my shoulder that last night. Our bodies curled on the cold bleachers of an empty field. "It's them, they say. They say it'll ruin me." Betrayal burned hotter than rejection. My own father, weaponizing his power to erase me from the one life that felt real. Alex ghosted after that, off to a fresh start in California, leaving me with a half-heart necklace and a scar that no amount of therapy could fade. College at Northwestern was my reinvention. I majored in journalism, minoring in fine arts, channeling the rage into ink and words. Evanston's liberal bubble let me breathe, pride parades with rainbow face paint, queer theory seminars that validated the boy I'd buried. I came out fully sophomore year, standing in a crowded quad with a megaphone borrowed from the activist club, shouting, "I'm Isaac Hargrove, and I'm gay as hell." The cheers drowned out the distant echo of Lincoln's voice. I thrived, interning at the Tribune, falling into a rhythm of bylines and bar hops. But romance? That was a ghost I chased fitfully. There was Jordan, the poli-sci whiz with a laugh like thunder, but he ghosted after I mentioned my dad's name. Then Marcus, a barista with tattoos like road maps, who bailed when commitment loomed. Each left me wondering if love was just another boardroom deal signed and shredded. It was during my senior year that I met Theo. Go, Theo. He was a grad student in literature, all lanky limbs and wire-rimmed glasses, quoting Whitman over coffee at the Art Institute. We collided at a reading series, me reciting a piece on fractured families, him in the front row, nodding like he saw straight through to the marrow. "Your words cut deep," he said afterward, his hand lingering on mine just a beat too long. That spark ignited slow, steady. A first date at the Bean, reflections warping our faces into something new. Lazy Sundays devouring dim sum in Chinatown, debating Vonnegut versus Kerouac. Theo was biracial, half Korean, half Irish, with a poet's soul and a fighter's fire. He'd grown up in the foster system, bounced between homes in Detroit, and carried his scars like badges. "Love isn't a luxury," he'd murmur into my neck during those quiet nights in his shoebox apartment, our bodies tangled in thrift store sheets. "It's survival." With Theo, I learned tenderness. We'd walk the lakefront at dawn, his head on my shoulder, planning a future that didn't include ghosts. He pushed me to submit my essays to magazines. I dragged him to sketch sessions in the parks, capturing his profile in quick, loving strokes. For the first time, I felt whole. Not the discarded son, not the reformed sinner, but Isaac. Artist, writer, lover. We talked marriage one crisp fall evening, leaves crunching underfoot in Jackson Park, his ring finger brushing mine. "Elope to Provincetown," he joked, but his eyes were serious. I said yes without hesitation, the word blooming like hope in my chest. But Lincoln's empire loomed eternal. Hargrove Industries swallowed competitors like a black hole, sprawling from steel mills in Gary to tech startups in the Loop. He graced Forbes covers, a silver fox with a jaw like chiseled granite, preaching family values at shareholder galas. I avoided it all, building my own path. Freelance pieces for The Atlantic on queer youth in the heartland, a graphic novel in the works about boys lost in the woods. Theo cheered every milestone, his pride fiercer than any father's could be. Yet doubt crept in, insidious as fog off the lake. What if I was still broken? What if love, like everything else, could be bought off? The invitation arrived like a grenade, tucked into my mailbox amid bills and fan mail. A gilt-edged card for the Hargrove Foundation's annual gala, honoring Chicago's unsung heroes, Lincoln's signature flourish at the bottom, and a handwritten note. Isaac, it's time we spoke. Your mother misses you. Dad. My stomach twisted. Mom had passed 2 years prior. Cancer, swift and merciless. Leaving a void Lincoln filled with platitudes at her funeral, but no real grief. Theo found me staring at it on the kitchen floor, coffee gone cold. Go, he urged, his hands cupping my face. Not for him, for you. Say what needs saying. I nodded, but sleep evaded me. Nightmares of camps and confessions replaying like a cursed reel. The night of the gala, the Palmer House ballroom glittered like a fever dream, crystal chandeliers dripping light onto tuxedo tycoons and socialites in sequins. I arrived solo, Theo tied up with a late seminar, my navy suit tailored sharp, a subtle rainbow pin on the lapel like a dare. Lincoln spotted me immediately, rising from his table like a king from his throne. His smile all teeth and calculation. Son, he boomed, clapping my shoulder hard enough to bruise. You clean up well. Join us. Us meaning his arm candy of the month, a blonde consultant half his age, and a circle of sycophants nodding like bobbleheads. Dinner was a minefield of small talk. Stock tips, yacht invites, me smiling through gritted teeth, fork scraping porcelain. Then the MC took the stage, announcing the keynote. Tonight, we honor Isaac Hargrove, Chicago native and rising voice for the marginalized, for his work with at-risk youth. My name, Lincoln's doing, no doubt, a PR stunt to launder his legacy. Panic clawed my throat, but Theo's words echoed. Say what needs saying. I ascended the steps, the room's applause a distant roar, heart pounding like a war drum. That's when it hit, the hook that snagged us all. The spotlight burned into my skin like a brand, and I could feel every eye in the room pinning me to the podium. Dad, I said, my voice cracking the silence like a gunshot. You called me broken when I was just a boy trying to whisper my truth. The words hung there, raw and unfiltered, and in that instant, I saw him, Lincoln Hargrove, the unbreakable titan of boardrooms, flinch in the front row, his face draining of color as if I just yanked the empire from under his feet. I paused, letting the echo settle, the room shifting uneasily in their seats. Forks clinked to a halt, whispers snuffed out like candles. 20 years ago, I continued, my voice steadying into something forged in fire. You looked at your 10-year-old son and saw a liability, not a child reaching for understanding, but a scandal waiting to erupt. You sent me away to fix me, to pray the gay out of my bones, because in your world of mergers and power plays, vulnerability was weakness. Gasps rippled through the crowd, some horrified, others intrigued, the elite always hungry for drama. Lincoln's hand trembled on his water glass. I could see the veins bulging, the mask cracking. But here's the thing, I pressed on, leaning into the mic, my knuckles white on the podium's edge. That boy didn't break. He rebuilt. He found love. Not the kind you broker in backrooms, but the raw, reckless kind that Theo showed me. The kind that says, you're enough, scars and all. Theo's face flashed in my mind, his smile a talisman against the storm. The room blurred. I was back in that Wicker Park brownstone, his fingers tracing my tattoos, reminders of camps and lost loves. And tonight, in this hall built on your dollars, Dad, I'm here to say, I forgive you. Not because you deserve it yet, but because holding on to that hate was killing me slower than any disease. Chaos erupted then, polite at first. A cough here, a chair scraped there, but building to a murmur like thunder. Lincoln surged to his feet, his face ashen, eyes wild with something I'd never seen. Fear. Not the calculated risk of a hostile takeover, but primal, gut-wrenching terror. Isaac, stop, he mouthed, or maybe he said it. The blood roared too loud in my ears. His consultant tugged at his sleeve, but he shook her off, weaving through tables toward the stage, security hovering like uncertain shadows. I didn't stop, couldn't. You built an empire on denial, denying workers their rights in those Gary Mills, denying your own heart when Mom begged you to see me. But empires fall, Dad. And mine? It's rising on truth. The applause started sporadic, then swelled. Activists in the back row on their feet, allies I'd never met cheering like we'd stormed the barricades. Lincoln reached the stage steps, his breath ragged, hand outstretched as if to pull me down from some precipice. "Son, please," he rasped, voice breaking for the first time in my memory. Up close, he looked frail, the lines around his eyes deeper than boardroom battles could carve. For a heartbeat, the world narrowed to us. Father and son, mirrors of regret. I stepped forward, not away, and took his hand. It was cold, trembling, the hand that signed my exile now clinging like a lifeline. "It's not too late," I whispered, just for him, the mic catching the fracture in my voice. "But it starts with you admitting you were wrong." He nodded, a jerky motion, tears, actual tears, tracking down his weathered cheeks. The room held its breath. Flashbulbs popped like distant fireworks. What followed was a blur. The MC wrapping the program early, guests milling in stunned clusters, reporters converging like sharks. Theo burst through the doors just as I descended, his arms enveloping me in a crush of wool and warmth. "You did it!" he murmured into my hair, pride vibrating through him. Lincoln hovered at the edges, flanked by his team, but his eyes never left me. Pleading, searching. We didn't speak that night, not really. He slipped away in the limo convoy, leaving a card with his private line and 2 words, "Call me." Theo and I escaped to our favorite dive bar on Division, nursing whiskeys and dissecting the wreckage. "You think he'll change?" Theo asked, his thumb circling mine on the scarred tabletop. I shrugged, the weight lifting but not gone. Maybe. Or maybe forgiveness is just for me. The weeks blurred into a media maelstrom. My speech went viral. Clips dissected on CNN. Op-eds in the Sun-Times hailing it as the reckoning Chicago's elite needed. Hargrove stock dipped 3%, whispers of boycotts from progressive funds. Lincoln weathered it with press releases touting evolving family values. But the call started. Tentative voicemails, then dinners at quiet clubs overlooking the river. I was scared, he admitted over ribeyes one rainy Tuesday, his voice gravelly with unpracticed vulnerability. "Your mother, she saw it in you early, said it was a gift. I saw headlines, scandals. Hargrove men don't." He trailed off, swirling his bourbon. "But losing you? That was the real scandal." Theo came to the third dinner, a buffer and a bridge. Lincoln eyed him warily at first, measuring, appraising, but Theo's easy charm disarmed him, stories of foster kid grit mirroring my own. "You raised a fighter," Theo said, clinking glasses. Lincoln's laugh was rusty, but genuine. Progress, inch by inch. A check for the Ali Forney Center. My old camp's exposure in an investigative piece I penned. Betrayal's sting faded, not to nothing, but to scar tissue, stronger, flexible. Spring brought Provincetown as promised. We said vows on the dunes at sunset, salt wind whipping our linen shirts, rings simple silver bands engraved with survival. Theo's eyes shone like the Atlantic, and as we kissed, seals on a pact forged in fire, I felt the boy's ghost finally rest. Lincoln sent a telegram. Proud, truly. Dad. No empire attached, just words. Back in Chicago, life wove forward. I launched the graphic novel, Whispers in the Woods, Tales of Reclaimed Boys, to acclaim, Theo editing beside me in our new Logan Square flat, sunlight pooling on oak floors. Lincoln visited Sundays, awkward at first, fumbling over board game rules and Theo's kimchi recipes. One evening, as we grilled brats in the backyard, he pulled me aside. "I denied you to deny myself," he confessed, voice low against the sizzle of coals. "Afraid of what loving you fully might mean, for me." His hand on my shoulder, steady now. "But you're my legacy, Isaac. Not the stocks. You." Tears pricked, but I laughed, pulling him into a hug. The first real one since I was knee-high. Theo watched from the porch, grinning like he'd won the lottery. In that moment, under a sky bruised purple with twilight, I saw it. Not perfection, but humanity. Flawed fathers, mended sons, love that bends but doesn't break. The American dream, queer and unapologetic, rising from the heartland's hard soil. And so we build one truthful word at a time.